They are one of the rarest species of storks in the world, and I think they are the most beautiful bird in the world. They are so inspiring. When I started my work, I always found people treated them as bad omen, disease carrier, and they were poisoned, they were persecuted, the trees were cut down. I'm very grateful to all the communities who are working together to save this bird. It is empowering thousands and thousands of women and also changing the society because our women are the custodian of change. Nobody taught me that you should study biology. But my grandma loved nature and she connected me with nature and she connected me with the storks when I was little.
Purnima Devi Barman grew up in the Indian state of Assam, where she forged an early connection with one of its rarest creatures, the greater adjutant stork. These enormous birds hunt and scavenge across northern India and Southeast Asia. But they breed in only a few places. One is in Cambodia. The others are in Northeast India. Here in Assam, there were once just 115 of them left, an ancient bird on the path to extinction. Locals call the storks Hargila, or bone swallower, because they can eat every part of a carcass. Their scavenging helps reduce disease and benefits the wildlife and people who live here. But it also gives the birds a bad reputation.
So I wanted to do my PhD on Hargila and I thought that maybe I can do something for the adjutant stork. So I started studying everything about the storks biology.
Then, in 2007, a disturbing encounter spurred Purnima to push beyond pure research.
One day, I just saw a man cutting down a huge nesting tree which was hosting 9 nests and all the baby birds fell down. A few of them died and a few of them were still alive. And when I saw them, I think because I was a mother, it deeply pained me. And I started arguing with the person why he did so in its breeding season.
But the confrontation didn't lead to the outcome she hoped for. Instead of helping to save the injured chicks, the man and his companions turned on Purnima and mocked the bird's suffering.
That day, actually, I think I got a purpose to live my life and everything changed. And when I came home, I was thinking, research would not be enough. We have to save the species, we have to save the habitats. First, we have to bring the birds into the hearts and minds of people.
That would be no small feat. The creature can be unsettling. It's nearly 5 feet tall, with an 8-foot wingspan, and an inflatable neck pouch that it uses in mating displays. Its looks draw comparisons to undertakers and associations with death itself.
Hargila was always misunderstood. It was always treated as a bad omen or disease carrier or pest.
It can also be a difficult neighbor.
Hargila comes very close to human habitation and they select the tall trees and they breed. People always found them very messy. They feed on carrion and they also bring large fish and these all fall down.
For ages, the storks have flocked to Assam for the wetlands.
They prefer a landscape where we have paddy fields, wetlands. This is the landscape where Hargila love to come.
Here, they hunt for fish, amphibians, and anything dead. But as Assam's human population grew tenfold over the past century, the wetlands shrank, and the storks were forced to find other ways to survive. Today, they've adapted to life in a man-made landscape.
They go to the garbage dump. They go wherever they found the meat remains, fish remains. They go there to eat them.
This survival strategy hasn't helped their reputation.
মৰা গেলা পচাইবিলাক খায় বা সিহঁতে গছৰ তলত পেলাই দিয়ে
তাৰপিছত আৰু ইমান গোন্ধ ওলাই একদম কেম্বা গোন্ধ আৰু
আগে ভাল নাপাইছিলোঁ আগে সেই দিছিলোঁ মই পথাৰত যিখন ছোৱালী অৱস্থাৰ পথাৰত যাওঁ মাছ ধৰে নহয় এই চপৰে ধৰি দিওঁ
আৰু সিহঁতকতো মাৰিব নোৱাৰে হাঁহটো ধৰাটো পুত্তে গিলিয়ে লৈ যায় উৰি যায় মই হাড়গিলাটো তাৰমানে দেখিলে তাৰমানে মাৰো লাগে
Purnima realized that the struggling storks were desperately in need of a new image. It was a tough sell.
When I try to tell them that this tree is important, this bird is important, we should save them, this kind of things sometimes doesn't work much. Very first when I organized meeting, nobody came. It was like empty. No one came. Nobody bothered. Then I asked why you don't attend the meeting. They tell that sister, we have many household chores. We have to cook for our children, for our husband, so we cannot come to your meeting.
Then, she hit on a more enticing recipe.
I started organizing cooking competitions for them, cooking festivals.
More women showed up, and once they grew to know her, she even got invited to a baby shower.
And everyone was laughing, happy, and the woman was so happy. And I think she got lots of respect. She was the center of attention. And I realized that what about those Hargila mothers? When they are mothers, they are not becoming the center of attention. So let's celebrate that. I started organizing Hargila baby shower when they are laying eggs in their breeding season, and our women started coming like anything. At first they laughed, they mingle, they laugh, but once they come, they become so emotionally sensitized and they realize the motherhood of the birds, and they go and they talk about this, that we have to save the trees. People will do when they feel it is relevant. So we just integrate it with our culture.
Purnima brought the get-togethers to other communities.
We just go from one village to another village, and it's like a surprise. We are very colorful with our traditional Assamese attire, and we have our Hargila headdress. Our women have their folk songs. We keep dancing. And when the women in the other village see our women, we invite them, if you want, please join us.
More and more did, and the movement took on a name that reflected its surging numbers: the Hargila Army.
Now we have more than 10,000 rural women as Hargila Army, so it's huge.
As the campaign gained momentum, conservation groups around the world took notice and chipped in with funding to help the storks recover. Purnima invested these resources in more cultural outreach.
We purchased many looms and we could give it to many women. Our women are already weavers, but now they are weaving Hargila. They are weaving for a cause. Noni Baido, Konita.
এনেকৈ বুলি আৰু আগবাঢ়ি গ'লোঁ আৰু বাইদেউৰ লগত বাইদেউক ক'লোঁ যে বাইদেউ আমিও আহিব পাৰিম নে তাৰপিছত বাইদেউ ক'লে কিয় নোৱাৰিব আহিলে মই ভালহে পাম তাৰপিছত সেনেকৈ গ'লোঁ আৰু বাইদেউৰ ওচৰত যাই আৰু
ইয়াত এটা জাপি আৰু এনেকৈ কৰি পেলাই
ভাবে মানে মই আগতে বৈ কাপোৰে বৈ থাকোনে থাকে বুলি আৰু তাকে ভাবোঁ আৰু কোনটো ডিজাইন কেনেকৈ দিলে ভাল হয় বা কেনেকৈ এইটো ডিজাইন বা ভাল লগা হ'ব সেইটো নিজে ভাবি কিনে আৰু আৰম্ভ কৰিলোঁ আৰু আহিলে আমি কাম কৰি ভাল লাগে উৎসাহিত হওঁ বা বাইদেউ লগ পাই বহুতখিনি আগবাঢ়ি যাব পাৰোঁ বা ঘৰখন চলাই নিয়াটো সহজ হৈছে।
Today, more than 1,000 women in Assam weave textiles and sew garments that feature the stork in their design. They increase local pride in the rare bird, and sales are booming.
বাহিৰৰ মানুহবিলাক আহিলে আমাক কিমান মৰম কৰে সাৱটি ধৰে কাপোৰবিলাক দেখিলে মানে বহুত মৰম কৰে আৰু আমাক আমাৰ সেইটো মানে বহুত ভাল লাগি যায় আৰু সেইকাৰণে এতিয়া বহুত ভাল পাওঁ আৰু হাৰগিলা আমাৰ।
The work provides women with an independent source of income, changing the social dynamics in these communities.
আৰু শালৰ কাম কৰি মই স্বাৱলম্বী হৈ আছোঁ, নিজৰ ভৰিত নিজে থিয় হৈছোঁ। এতিয়া ল'ৰা ছোৱালী কিবা খুজিলে মই দিব পৰা হৈছোঁ, আৰ্থিকভাৱে আমাক স্বাৱলম্বী হ'বলৈ বাইদেৱে আমাক জোৰ দি আছে।
It's a central part of Purnima's strategy.
Conservation cannot happen alone. Without livelihood, conservation is always isolated and we will not be able to achieve what we want. I am very proud that our work is not only saving the bird, it is empowering more and more women, thousands and thousands of women.
Purnima has also found ways to bring the men into the Salvation Army. Here, men own most of the land, including the trees the birds nest in. So she invites them to help plant saplings of trees the storks favor and hold ceremonies to honor those who protect them.
Honor is so important because people never realize that Hargila is in our backyard and we are saving the Hargila, and for that he needs to be honored. He deserves that salute from all.
Over the past year, the Hargila Army has planted more than 45,000 trees to create new canopy for nests. But even when protected, these nurseries can be precarious.
So many baby birds fall down when it is windy and due to storm and many other reasons.
তেতিয়া মানে উৰিবলৈ চেষ্টা কৰে, চেষ্টা কৰিলে মানে তলত পৰি মাটিত পৰি গ'লে মৃত্যুমুখত পৰে, মাটিত পৰি গ'ল।
Up to 3/4 of adjutant chicks die from the fall or a subsequent starvation. Too high a loss for a species the Army is trying to save. So to safeguard the nestlings, teams install nets to break their fall.
কেতিয়াবা উৰিব নোৱাৰি সিহঁতে গছৰ পৰা তলত পৰি যায়, তলত পৰি মাটিত পৰি গ'লে সিহঁতে মৃত্যু হয়। সেইটো কাৰণে আমি নেট লগোৱা কামটো ষ্টাৰ্ট কৰিলোঁ। পিছত আমি বহুতখিনি চৰাই এতিয়ালৈকে বচাইছোঁ। মানে চৰাইটো ৰেস্কিউ কৰি কেনে বা আমি চিৰিয়াখানাটো লৈ যাওঁ কেতিয়াবা কাৰণে বা ফৰেষ্টকো আমাৰ আছাম ষ্টেট জু সিহঁতকো ইনফৰ্ম কৰোঁ, সিহঁতকো দি দিওঁ।
The chicks are cared for at the Assam Forest Department or here at the Center for Wildlife Rehabilitation and Conservation. At this stage of their young lives, chicks are completely dependent on their parents. So it's up to human caregivers to nurse them back to health. By the time they're around 6 months old, they're ready to be released. Since 2007, more than 500 birds have been rescued and freed at their nesting sites. Thanks to the Hargila Army, these villages have become a stronghold for recovery. Since its low point decades ago, the Assam population has grown 15-fold.
Recently, we found around 1,830 birds in Assam, and the global population is now about 3,000.
Today, the storks have been upgraded from endangered to near threatened, an encouraging conservation milestone. It's a triumph that's being shared with a new generation who are learning to appreciate and care for nature from a young age.
everyone learn how Hargila is feeding on a reptile, how Hargila is feeding on a fish, and how every species is important and how we are also part of it. I think they are our future guardian of storks and future guardian of biodiversity. We always think that conservation is only happening in protected areas, national parks. But in villages, we have our biodiversity and we have to protect them. If we are optimistic and if we are consistent, what we do, we can achieve what we want. Nobody can stop us. We are very unstoppable.
Thanks for watching this episode. If you'd like to dive deeper into this story or learn how you can help protect biodiversity near you, visit wildhope.tv and come back on Mondays for more Wild Hope right here at PBS Nature on YouTube.